Record will show the presence of the defendant and now all counsel. Mr. Nurmi, you may cross-examine.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I want to show you what's in ours. As Defendant's Exhibit 11. May I approach, Your Honor? And tell me if you can verify, is that your cell phone number?
It is, yes.
Okay. And was that the initial text, the text you sent to Mr. Searcy?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, I'm not going to ask you to make them public, but I'm going to approach with a piece of paper, and I'd like you to write down your wife's cell phone and your current home phone for me. Could you do that?
Sure.
Do you have a pen?
I do.
And you're done?
Done.
Thank you, sir. And these are both current?
Yes, I don't have a home phone.
Okay. And Your Honor, when marked, I would ask that the exhibit be admitted under seal.
Exhibit 12. Any objection from the state?
No.
All right, Exhibit 12 will be admitted for purposes of this hearing only.
Now, in your testimony yesterday, Mr. Hughes, you told us that you had not had any conversations with Mr. Martinez until the night prior to your testimony. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you did not speak with him until January 27th of 2013?
Yes.
Okay. And that's when he asked you to come out here?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't recall if it was him. Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I didn't know if you were done with your answer or not. You said yes?
Yes, I don't recall if it was him or someone from his office.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And what did that person, whoever you spoke to, whether it was Mr. Martinez or someone from his office, what did they tell you?
That they may need me to testify, something to that effect.
Okay. And did they tell you the reason?
No, they said that they may or may not need me.
Okay. And at some point in time on the 28th, you spoke to, well, let me ask you this. How were the travel arrangements made?
Through his office, through Philip, I believe.
Okay.
Worked with me on the arrangements.
And you had a plane ticket and you flew out there that same day or the next day?
Same day as what?
Same day as the initial contact, the 27th.
I'm sorry, ask the question again?
You were contacted on the 27th, right?
Yes.
Okay, that would have been the day before you testified, which was yesterday, the 28th.
Yes.
Okay. Did you fly out the same day or did you fly out the next morning, the morning you testified?
I flew out I got here Sunday night.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So Sunday the 27th, you arrive here. When do you speak to Mr. Well, is that when you spoke to him? Did you speak with him on the phone prior to getting here? I'm asking.
Yes, I believe I did. It was him's office. I don't recall.
Okay. Let me be more specific. Did you talk to Mr. Martinez about your testimony, the testimony you were going to give the following day or that same day?
He inquired about Gus and the conversation
Okay.
that we had.
And when did he do that?
We met Sunday night.
Okay. And where was that?
He came to my hotel.
Okay. And the two of you had a conversation?
Yes,
And how long was that conversation?
about 20 minutes.
Okay. And prior to that, tell me about what was discussed during that conversation.
About my phone call with Gus.
Okay. Did he inquire about any text messages or anything you might have sent to Gus?
Yes.
Okay. And tell us what you described to him about the phone call you had. Well, let me ask you this. Let's start with the text message because that's when the contact began, right?
Yes.
Okay. Your testimony here yesterday was that your wife advised you that Gus was on the witness list.
She told me that he was, yes.
Okay. How did she know?
Someone from the prosecution's office called her and asked if she knew Gus Searcy.
Okay. To your knowledge, was that Mr. Martinez or was that someone else from his office?
It was not Mr. Martinez.
Okay. And how do you know this?
My wife told me.
Okay. Had your wife had any contact, to your knowledge, with anyone from the prosecutor's office in the last year?
Yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, what were those contacts?
Just inquiring if she knew a certain person.
Certain one person or other or several people?
I don't know the conversations that they had, so I'm not sure. She just mentioned that I know that someone had called more than this recent time.
Okay, so there had been more than one contact between your wife and the county attorney's office, right?
Yeah, over the last 4 years, yes.
Over the last 4 years, okay. How about since trial began? Had someone from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office contacted your wife?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah, I don't know if, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I know about this instance with Gus, yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was during trial. I don't know how many more there were during trial,
Okay.
if at all.
If at all. So you would, as your wife has not told you about any contact from the county attorney's office? Or speaking with them or speaking with other witnesses since the trial began? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, you just threw witnesses in there, so you need to clarify the question.
Okay, so she spoke to them about witnesses after the trial started. That's what you're telling us, right?
About Gus Searcy, yes.
Okay, and
They inquired about him.
other witnesses?
I don't know.
But they did, over the course of time, inquire of your wife about other witnesses, right?
I don't know about witnesses, but certainly people in relation to this case.
Well,
People that we've known, friends that we've had.
a few moments ago you said it was witnesses. She consulted with them about witnesses.
I don't know if it was specifically witnesses or not, but she definitely has had conversations with them like she's had conversations with you.
Okay. As it relates to your wife's conversation, do you know if she had any conversations with Mr. Martinez directly?
I don't know that.
when you told Gus that you were working with the prosecution, correct?
I don't recall using those words, no.
Okay. That you were watching the trial?
Yes, I did tell him we were watching the trial, correct.
And that you were speaking with the prosecutor about things you saw in trial in case anything was inaccurate, right? That's what you told him.
No, I told him that my wife is very interested in this and that she's watching the trial looking for BS.
Okay. Has she made contact of this supposed BS to the prosecution's office?
You can ask her.
Okay, and we will. Now, there were a couple of things I want to clarify. You said that you haven't spoken to the prosecutor for about 3 years. That was your testimony yesterday.
Yes.
Okay. Does that include other people from the prosecutor's office before you're talking about this travel, or were there conversations with people from the prosecutor's office, not just Mr. Martinez?
I have not had a conversation with anyone from prosecution up until this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Up until the travel arrangements on the 27th,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. You made a couple other comments yesterday. You made a comment that there were some letters that were proven to be forged or false, right?
Yes.
On what do you base that knowledge?
They weren't admitted into this trial.
Okay. That's how you
Experts have looked at them.
That's how you concluded that. Did someone from the prosecutor's office tell you that?
Tell me what?
That these letters were forgeries or fakes? Is that what
We've
happened?
been following the trial very, very closely.
Okay. Did someone from the prosecutor's office speak to your wife about this?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So this conclusion you made that the letters are fake is entirely based on, not on an actual knowledge that they're fake, but just on the idea that they weren't admitted, right?
No, the letters are fake. I know the letters are fake, same way you know the letters are fake.
Mr. Hughes, let me show you. And I suspect, I understand, given the subject matter of these letters, that you would hope that they are fake. I get that. I want to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 4. Why don't you read that to yourself and see if you recognize it?
I do.
Have you read that before?
I have.
And when did you read that?
The day you sent it to my wife.
Okay. And your wife, I'm going to show you this so it's not broadcast here. If I may approach again, Your Honor.
Yes.
Can you look at that email address and see if you recognize that as an email address associated with your wife?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that email that she sent that to me?
Yes.
Okay.
You want both?
Both is fine. Thank you. The last document was exhibit 4. The prior was exhibit 9
Thank you.
on the last document. Now, the supposed fakeness, or the forged of these documents that you're asserting here today, and that you claim I know were fake. Did anyone advise you before you made these contacts with Mr. Searcy and said these things that there was actually an expert who took a look at these letters and concluded that this letter that I just showed you, dated January 21st, 2007, Exhibit 4, was in fact, it was highly probable that it was authored by Mr. Alexander. Are you aware of that?
Restate your question.
Were you aware that an expert concluded that this letter, while you're going around telling people it was fake, that an expert concluded that it was highly probable that Mr. Alexander wrote this letter?
No, I'm not aware of that, but I'm aware that you said that it was 100% proven and that you had irrefutable evidence that the letter was authentic.
And you're saying, and we never spoke about it, right?
You told my wife that.
Okay. And these letters, I would say, and you knew Mr. Alexander for quite some time, right?
Since 2001.
Okay. I would think, and you were a close friend with him, right?
Yes.
Knew him very well.
Yes.
And the same can be said about your wife, right?
Yes.
Okay. When she received these letters, she said, no, that didn't sound like Travis, did she? Is that what she told me? We can read it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She said, wow, I knew he had issues, but not these.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for your consideration and giving this to us ahead of time. We really appreciate it. Right?
Yes.
She went on to say that we are obviously freaking out. What ages did he prefer?
I'm going to object to this portion of him reading this. Clearly, those letters have been shown to be forged by the defendant, and the fact that he's reading them is inappropriate.
Judge, that's not
Counsel
true.
approach, please.
in in June of 2010, based on your wife's response, and she shared that letter with you based on what you said before. She shared that letter with you sometime in June of 2010, right?
Which letter?
The letter I showed you earlier?
Yes.
She shared that with you at that point in time, and I'm sure you discussed it, right?
We did.
Okay. And based on the emails I received, it would seem that it was believed to be true, right?
For a few minutes, yes.
Okay. What changed your mind?
Well, first of all, the only reason she believed it is because of what you told her. After analyzing it, looking at it, it didn't add up.
Okay. And conversations with the prosecutor, perhaps?
No.
Well, you just said it related to them being inadmissible. That would have happened months later, right?
What are you saying? What?
You said that you knew they were fake because, or you were asserting they were fake because they weren't admitted through a hearing.
That's one reason. The other reason is we looked at it and it didn't make any sense. Didn't add up. And it was inconsistent with Travis's behavior.
What was that last sentence, sir?
It was inconsistent. We've seen a lot of his letters. None of them are dated. It just doesn't make any sense. The
So
time
you
frame
did-
doesn't
you
make
did
sense.
your
The
own-
calendar doesn't make sense.
Yes.
The calendar didn't make sense. The date didn't make sense. It was her reconstructing a story.
That was your
That was my
personal
assessment,
handwriting.
and that was my wife's assessment.
Okay.
The day we got the letter.
Now, you also testified that you believed that the reason we had placed you on the witness list, we being the defense, had placed you on the witness list, was to keep you out of the courtroom, right?
Could you
Overruled.
ask the question again?
You testified yesterday that of your belief, or you asserted that the reason you were on Miss Arias' witness list is because, only because, to keep you out of the courtroom, right?
Yeah, I felt that way.
Okay.
Yes.
You felt that way. Yesterday you said it as if it was fact.
Yeah. Well,
Well, who gave you that information, Mr. Hughes?
What information?
This idea that we put you on the witness list in order to keep you out of the courtroom.
Because when we had a hearing with your client before, we were asked to leave the courtroom. So I just assumed that if we came back to trial, that you would have us excused from the courtroom. So we deduced that from our experience with you in the past.
Okay. But there be several other reasons to call you as a witness, wouldn't there?
What are you saying?
In January of 2007, you and your wife engaged in some correspondence with Mr. Alexander where you explained to him that he was being abusive to Jodi Arias, right?
Objection relevance as to that portion. How does that have anything to do with the prosecutor and this witness who haven't spoken in 3 years?
Approach.
Mr. Hughes, I'm going to show you an exhibit that has been marked, exhibit number 5. If you recall, just a few moments ago, I referenced some emails regarding between you and Mr. Alexander about how he treated Miss Arias, and I'd like to reproach, Your Honor. Could you please read the portion of the email that you wrote to him?
Okay. Am I just reading this first part, or is there more?
No, sir, the entire portion of the email that you responded, I believe it's more than one page.
Okay.
I believe your portion begins on page 3.
Do you have the email that began this conversation? I'm trying to find the context. I don't see it.
Your response on 13107 in its entirety is listed below. Is listed beginning page 3.
No, my question is, where's Travis's email to me that began this conversation?
Sir, I'm asking you about your response.
And Judge, he has the right to ask for the contents of this if he's going to be attempted to be impeached.
We just had an objection to Mr. Alexander's email being brought in. Now the state is saying they want it brought in.
No, I'm saying he's entitled to read it, which is different.
Well-
Mr. Neri, do you have the email?
That begins on page 1 of 6 on 1/31/2007.
It's here?
If you look at page 1, it says Chris. That's Mr. Alexander's response to you. Signed, Travis. And then your response begins on page 3.
Now, what I'm asking for is, I see here, I start talking to Travis, and I'm obviously talking about something, and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, why don't you go ahead and review the portion that I asked you to review?
I'd like to know the context of this
Why don't
email.
you review the portion I asked you to review?
I can do that. And what was the part you wanted me to review specifically?
You're done reading your portion?
No, I'm not.
Okay, we'll keep going then.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. The subject matter of this email related to how Mr. Alexander was treating Miss Arias, right?
Part of it?
And how it wasn't in a very kind way, right?
I don't recall. I'd really like to read the first part of the letter, what I said to him.
The portion you just read,
Yes.
you expressed to Mr. Alexander, and I know you're trying to wiggle out of it with context, but the ultimate reality is...
And second, he's asking about content. You ordered him not to talk about content.
All right.
No, you asked summation, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm not asking specific statements. I'm asking a summary of the substance.
All right. Begin again. Mr. Hughes, do not answer the question until the prosecutor has an opportunity to make an objection. Go ahead, Mr. Merriman.
The subject matter of this email, the portion that you read just now, dealt with how Mr. Alexander, in general, wasn't treating Jodi right, correct?
And again, it violates your order. He's trying to get in what the email says. He can be asked. It deals with treatment between the two of them. He doesn't have to characterize it.
All right. I'm going to overrule the objection to that specific question. You may answer.
Yes.
You also had conversations with this man here, right? Detective Flores?
Yes.
And during those conversations, do you recall Detective Flores saying, you could see Travis losing it with Jodi and throwing against her a wall, right?
Relevance.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me ask you, Mr. Hughes, what was your reason for contacting Mr. Searcy?
I was curious.
Curious about what?
Curious why he was on the defense list.
And your reason for telling him that I was a quote-unquote snake, why did you tell him that?
I don't recall calling you a snake, but I did say something to that effect.
Okay. And what was your point of doing that?
He was talking about the prosecution. I was talking about the defense.
Were you attempting to dissuade him from cooperating with Miss Arias?
No.
Were you attempting him to caution him about me?
No. Just expressing my opinion.
Expressing your opinion. No reason for doing it, right?
No.
That's your testimony? None. Okay. If you were called to testify on Miss Arias' behalf, would you be happy about that?
No, I would not.
Why not?
Because she murdered my friend in cold blood.
Would you cooperate?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Now, you made the comment during your testimony that Mr. Searcy was a man who liked the attention of the media, right?
Limelight, yes.
Okay. But specifically, you even mentioned the attention of the media, right?
I don't know that I said that.
Okay.
I don't recall.
You gave interviews with the media, right?
One.
Okay. Several hours, right? With CBS?
48 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. To your knowledge, you haven't seen Mr. Searcy interviewed anywhere about this case, have you?
No, I have not.
Okay.
He was irrelevant.
Redirect.
Sir, with regard to this case, before you were here in the Phoenix area on Sunday, when was the last time you spoke to the prosecutor, Juan Martinez?
3 years ago.
And were there ever any emails exchanged between you and Mr. Martinez during that 3-year period?
None whatsoever.
You indicated that you would not be happy to testify in this case on behalf of the defendant, but if you were subpoenaed, would you comply with the process?
Of course.
I don't have anything else.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you. Do you want these? Sure.
Just leave those right there. Thank you. Counsel?
Your Honor, given the information elicited here, we would be requesting an out-of-state subpoena for Sky Hughes to continue our pursuit of the discussion she had with the county attorney's office and how that affected their disposition towards these proceedings.
Submit the paperwork. I will sign the order. Is there anything else for today?
Well, Judge, I believe we do have Mr. Searcy here to testify in rebuttal, as well as, I believe, if I understand correctly, Mr. Abdulhali is appearing telephonically today as well.
Are you ready to do cross-examination of Mr. Abdulhali at this time?
I am.
All right, we need to get him on the line. Mr. Abdahadi,
Yes, miss.
this is Judge Stevens.
Oh, hey, hello.
You are still under oath, do you understand?
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Nurmi, you may proceed with cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Excellent.
Yesterday, when you spoke with Mr. Martinez in court, you testified about going to be interviewed by Mr. Martinez, right?
On the phone or in person? I'm sorry. Can you clarify?
Well, let me ask you this. How many conversations did you have with Mr. Martinez?
A few over the last several years.
Okay. And were they all over the phone, or were they all in person? How did that come to pass?
There were, I think, 2 on the phone and then 1 in person in 2011.
Okay. 2011, you said you spoke in person, and was that here in Phoenix?
Yes, sir. I had business in the area, and I made myself available to the prosecutor if he did need to speak to me, and he asked that I come in, and I went in and we talked.
Okay. And do you remember what month this was in 2011, sir?
I believe it was July, mid to end July. I had an event in Phoenix.
Okay. Tell us about the conversation you had with Mr. Martinez. And it was him personally?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us about the conversation you had with him in July of 2011.
Specifically, do you have a question in mind? We were there for about 45 minutes together.
Okay, well, tell us what you discussed in those 45 minutes.
Okay, well, very generally, we talked about what I knew, what I heard, or had spoken to Jodi about. He had a list of phone numbers that he was corroborating phone conversations that I had said I had with Jodi, and he was marking the numbers in accordance with the dates that I had thought that they had this conversation to match up, to make sure that I was telling the truth. I guess he wanted to see that, there was actually a phone call to her or from her to my phone number, kind of a thing. And then just talked about my general feeling about what was going on or what had happened and where I was and what I had thought about it.
Okay. And I take it then this was the only in-person meeting you had with him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you had telephonic conversations with him before, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many of those?
I believe 2.
Okay. And how many subsequent to July of 2011?
You mean after July of 2011?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, maybe 1 or 2.
Okay. So you had 2 before July 2011 and 1 or 2 after, right?
Right.
Okay. In terms of the July 2011 conversation, did you discuss your relationship with Miss Arias?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you remember telling Mr. Martinez about it?
Nothing different than I had said in that interview that you seem to have watched. Point being was that we hung out a little bit and chummed around and got to know each other pretty decently. We had gotten a lunch and we had gotten a dinner. And specifically, I went into some of the details of the dinner, what some of our conversation was. The call that I received from her a couple of days after that dinner, where she had informed me that she was getting back together with her ex-boyfriend, which at that time I thought was the gentleman she had explained to me that she lived with in Palm Springs. It was the first time that I had heard that she had ever gone out with Travis. I did not know that prior. When she explained that to me, that's when I asked her if that's who led her to Mormonism, because that was one of the conversations that we had at dinner, because we walked around and went to a bookstore, and religion came up, and she had said that she was dabbling in Mormonism. So a couple of days later, I thought it was interesting that I knew Travis was a Mormon, so I thought it was interesting that she said that Travis was this person she felt she was cheating on. So then I asked her if that's who led her to the LDS church, and she said, well, no, he showed it to me, but I had made a decision. that was the the extent of our engagement in terms of anything social. After that, we'd never seen each other socially again, and as I explained to Mr. Martinez, we kept a pretty decent phone conversation. Maybe every 6 weeks, couple of months, we'd be on the phone together. One would call the other, how you doing, what have you. And that was the only contact I had with her, except for a couple of business events that she was at that I was at, but we had never seen each other socially after that dinner night.
Okay. Let me ask you, you said the interview that I watched, what interview are you referring to?
The one that you had made mention of when I was on the phone waiting, the headline, or the Dr. Drew show that I had participated in.
I'm sorry, what did you hear?
You made mention of the interview yesterday when you were talking about me before I came on the phone. You brought that up.
A moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
If you want to clear this up, it appears from what he's saying that he may have been watching television, so perhaps we may ask him if that was going on. I don't know. I don't know how he knows, but maybe that's what he was doing before he actually testified.
That's exactly what happened. I did not know that I was not allowed to watch television before yesterday morning, but since yesterday and this conversation we're having now, I have not watched television or got on the internet. But before, I was watching television because I was aware that I was going to be called, and I didn't want to get on another phone call or a conference call. And then when the prosecutor made mention that I was going to be called, that's when I turned the TV off and was available to the court.
Okay. Speaking of your testimony yesterday that you gave telephonically, when did Mr. Martinez contact you about testifying?
Sometime last week.
Okay. And what did he say that he was going to ask you to testify about?
Simply that I had given Mr. Searcy his information and vice versa. And as I said specifically yesterday in the testimony, that Mr. Searcy did not get contacted by Mr. Martinez because Mr. Searcy made a point on several occasions to let me know that. And I had explained that to the prosecutor last week when we spoke, and he asked me if that was the person in question. I said, yes, absolutely. And he said that, or asked me if I had any conversations with him, and I said, yeah, we've only had several over the years, not a bunch, but they were all relating to the fact that Mr. Martinez had not contacted him, and he seemed bothered by that.
Did you watch Mr. Searcy testify yesterday morning?
Yes, I did. As I indicated, I was not aware that I was not supposed to watch any of the trial. So, yeah, yesterday I did watch Mr. Searcy. I watched Mr. Hughes, then got on the phone with you, but then as per the order of, beg your pardon, my other phone, as per the order of the court, I did not watch any testimony today or get online to see what was going on.
So prior to you giving the testimony here yesterday, Mr. Martinez did not advise you as a potential witness not to watch any of the television coverage. Is that correct?
If that was the advice given to me, that's something that I did not hear. And I apologize for that.
Okay. Now, you mentioned you had two conversations with Mr. Martinez before the meeting in July of 2011.
Yes.
And what were the subject matter of those conversations, and when did they take place?
The first one specifically was September of 2008, and that was myself contacting the prosecutor because this was about 2 months or so after Jodi was arrested. The long story short, at the time, or prior to that, I didn't necessarily feel that I had a whole lot to share, and I had not told this story to anybody save for one person. Nobody even knew that Jodi and I had gone out, not from me anyway. And so in September 2008, when I saw the Inside Edition, and she claimed that no court would convict her, that's when I became a little concerned, because I had already read the police report online, and so I didn't believe in her innocence, and thought if I didn't contribute something, that maybe this would be a travesty on my part. So I went ahead and contacted the prosecutor's office approximately 2 months after her arrest. And at that point, I went ahead and shared with Mr. Martinez that, him being the expert, I was just going to share my story with him, and if he could use it, awesome. If not, no harm, no foul, but I just wanted to at least talk to somebody about what I had known at the time.
Did you advise him that you had read the police report online when you spoke with him?
Yes.
Okay. And that would have been the first conversation, September 2006. And when was
September 2008.
I'm sorry, I misspoke, sir. And then when was the second conversation?
Sometime toward the end of 2009.
Okay.
I believe it was October or November.
All right. And tell me the reason for that telephone conversation.
That was just simply me checking in, because I know there had been some postponements, and just letting him know that if he needed me, and he quickly thanked me, and that was the end of that. And then we didn't speak again till about July of 2011, when I had gone in to the office to actually speak to him.
Right. In July, in any of these conversations up to and including the conversation in July of 2011, had he told you that he was going to call you as a witness?
He gave no indication of that.
Okay. Did he give you any advice as to how to react if anyone on Miss Arias' behalf contacted you?
No, he did not. In fact, I contacted him in the spring of 2012 because one of your investigators called me, and so I called my attorney here in California because I had never been involved in anything like this before. And it was on my attorney's advice in California that I can talk to you, that I can talk to your investigator, and not talking to your investigator is not breaking a law, but that it would be a good idea if I had a conference call with Mr. Martinez. And at that point, I reached out to Mr. Martinez via text to see if he'd be available. He said he would. I then called back your investigator, I believe this was March or April of last year, and informed him that I would be glad to speak with him on a conference call with Mr. Martinez, and at that point, I did not receive a phone call back.
Okay. So Mr. Martinez wanted to be a part of any phone conversation that Ms. Arias, our defense team, had with you, correct?
No, that's not what I said.
You
Can
just,
I restate what I said?
well, you just told us. I don't know.
No, what I said is I reached out to him after I spoke to my attorney. My attorney said it would be a good idea to have a conference call with your investigator, Mr. Martinez. I reached out to Mr. Martinez via text and asked if he was available. He said he was, and that's what happened.
Okay.
I want to make sure we're clear on that. This is a phone call.
I understand what you're saying, sir.
Okay, good, good.
In terms of media, you talked about in your testimony yesterday, if I understood you correctly, you spoke about how Mr. Searcy was someone who wanted the attention of the media, correct?
I speculated that, absolutely, sure.
Okay, you speculated that. Apart from doing an interview on the HLN network with Dr. Drew, what other TV shows did you appear on?
None.
Okay.
In fact, I've been called repeatedly by the usual suspects and have said no to all of them. The only reason I spoke to Dr. Drew is because he's the only one I was comfortable with.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
I have none, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Do we have Mr. Searcy here for redirect?
I believe it is my understanding that we do.
Mr. Searcy, please come on up and have a seat at the stand. You are still under oath, do you understand? Is that yes, sir?
Yes, sir.
Would you hand me those documents, please? Thank you.
Mr. Searcy, when did you first, to best as you can recall, make contact with the county attorney's office?
Probably 2 days after I had first heard that this all happened.
Okay. And did you speak with someone? Did you leave a message? What happened after that phone call?
I got a recording and left a message.
Okay. Did you ever hear back from the county attorney's office?
No.
Okay. When did you make any subsequent attempts to contact the county attorney's office?
I can't precisely, but a few months later, like 2-3 months later, once more information came out about it. Because originally I called because I had one piece of information that could be very useful at that point in time. Then later on, that information was really no longer relevant. But the other piece of information I had was, so I called about that.
Okay. And did you describe the piece of information on these calls?
Neither.
Okay. And then you became aware that Mr. Abduhadi was coming to be interviewed by the county attorney's office, correct?
Yeah, he had contacted me and let me know that he was going to be flown out to Arizona to be interviewed.
Okay. And at that point in time, was there discussion about, are you advising Mr. Abduhadi what you knew, or and that sort of thing? Just kind of describe that for us.
I didn't cover any real great detail, but I said I had some information they might want to know about, so to let them know, and he said he would talk to them and tell them.
Okay. And subsequent to his interview with the county attorney's office, was it your understanding that he told them about you having this information?
When he came back, he said that he had talked to them and someone would be contacting me.
Okay. And did they ever contact you?
No, a couple weeks later, Abe had contacted me and asked if I'd heard from him, and I said, no, I never heard from your guy. And that was it.
Okay. Without telling me who it was someone present when you had this phone conversation with Chris Hughes that where he asked about your being on Jodi's witness list?
Yes, there was someone in the car with me.
Okay. Is that person afraid to come forward, afraid of Mr. Hughes?
Yes?
Okay. For business, financial reasons, right?
Yes.
Okay. This conversation you had with Mr. Hughes, Is it your impression that he was attempting to dissuade you from cooperating with myself or Jodi Arias?
That's interesting. Because of who it is and the fact that he's very powerful within the company, there's an implied, like, why are you doing this? Because, he doesn't normally call me or talk to me. So the fact that he would call me or talk to me is kind of unusual.
And
We've spoken a few times, but not, any kind of regular basis.
So you believe that there was an implied threat in there?
I can't say it was a threat, but it was, for me, my main thing was, how did he know I was on a list that I didn't even know I was on? Because when I last talked with you, you weren't sure. So I got that, and that's what made me want to talk to him to find out how he even knew about it.
Okay. And you said he referred to me as a snake and that I was a liar, things of that nature, right?
All that stuff, yes.
Okay. And you would say that those would be things that would attempt to dissuade you to work with us, right?
Yeah, he attempted to shake your credibility with me, yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Just may I ask may I follow up on that?
You may.
Sir, you indicated that you don't speak or talk to Mr. Hughes very often. Actually, that's not true, is it?
Well, let's get our definitions of what very often is.
Well, you used that, so why don't you give me your definition?
I've spoken to Chris maybe 2 months ago, maybe once every 2 or 3 months, maybe.
Isn't it true that this past weekend on a Saturday he was scheduled to appear at one of the seminars?
He was holding one of his own seminars for his own business, and we had flyers at our meeting that we were passing out, but I had no conversation with him about that till the day in the car.
And with regard to the conversation about the person in the car, who is it?
Not relevant.
Sir, it's not the way it works.
Objection, Your Honor. It isn't relevant.
Counsel approach. Proceed.
Sir, do you have a pen?
Yes.
Write the name down of the person that's present in the car.
Yes, sir. Do it. I'm going to seal it. It will not be public information.
And if I refuse?
I'm ordering you to do it, sir.
And if I write this number down and it's under seal, what does that mean exactly?
That means it is not public information, but the parties will have access to the information, but it will not be public.
What happens if I decline on the 5th?
We will need to discuss that. Is that what you're asking to do?
If perhaps Mr. Searcy should be appointed counsel.
Do you have an attorney, sir?
Not handy.
Do you have an attorney that you would like to consult with about this issue?
At this time of day, no.
All right, we will adjourn until tomorrow. I will give you an opportunity to discuss this issue with your attorney. You have the ability to hire your own counsel, is that correct?
Well, in lieu of that, since I am supposed to leave town, I would accept whatever you say as what could happen as being credible.
You may. This time I'm going to ask that everyone leave the courtroom. I'm going to have a proceeding outside the presence of the public. Will also not be recorded in any way, other than by the court interpreter, or the court